the Human Services Commission to order. Jeanette, I assume that you did not hear anything from the public, so.
Hang on one second. We don't have Viviana. So minutes. I am willing to write down motions and seconds and the roll call vote. And as I don't believe we need anything more than that in our minutes, I'm willing to, until Viviana gets here, I'll take the minutes. I don't think we need commentary, and we don't need, the topics are right there in the agenda. So we'll just go with that if that's okay with everyone.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Call to order at 7 p.m. Let's keep going.
Jeanette, I assume that you did not hear anything from the public?
Never mind. Viviana's here.
Okay.
And no, I did not hear anything from the public. And Viviana, you saved my butt. Thank you.
Yes. Welcome, Viviana.
Okay. Viviana, when you're ready to take minutes, let us know.
She's muted.
No, she's not muted.
Yes,
No,
she
is muted.
Yes, she is muted.
Oh,
Viviana,
boy.
you're muted.
No, now she's muted. Okay, try that.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Welcome.
Okay.
Welcome. Okay. We called the special meeting to order just a few seconds ago, so that's already been taken care of. And Jeanette didn't hear from any members of the public, so we can, this is obviously being recorded. And first item on our agenda is youth services. Nancy?
Hi, everyone.
Please present.
I just wanted to request an increase in the fee of the youth evening program per student. We have not increased the fee since 2010. At that point, it was increased to $5 per student. I'd like to ask for you to make a motion to increase it to $7 per student with charges for special events going up to $10 per student. So reason being, the cost of DJ has gone way up, the cost of inflatables has gone way up, and I just looked at percentage increase over the last few years. It's gone up about 125% since we started charging $5 per student. So I don't think that we can, carry on youth evening program unless we increase revenues, especially if we want to keep the budget, around the same amount.
So Nancy, if
Yes.
costs have gone up over 100%, how have you survived over the years without a fee increase?
We do with less. We try to get more, more donations. We'll plan to go after some sponsorships this year and probably reduce the number of inflatables that we use this year, because one of their cost increases has been not only staffing, but also insurances. And there are times I'll call and I'll ask about a program that we used to do, and they'll say, Nancy, you can't afford this anymore. They just flat out tell me because of their costs, they have to pass it on to the customers. So we have tried, we have, limited, but still, the kids have gotten a nice program, I think, and they do still get their food provided to them. And, we thought about increasing the cost of food, just charging them separately, but to handle money at the food table just doesn't seem to make sense to us. And selling tickets would just be more difficult, and it's hard enough to get volunteers. So, we want to make the best use of our staff and volunteers that we have.
I think one of the most important things is to not price kids out of this. We thought about $6, but we're, with our record of raising prices once in 10 years, that didn't seem like a good option. If you're going to get a bite at the apple, you go and you take a little bigger bite. We thought about $10 and what that would do to some families. It might price the kids out. 10, of course, being easier to deal with at the ticket counter at where they check in. But we've come up with some solutions for changing the cash box operations, and we think $7 is fair. We think that it's affordable for what they get. I remember doing this job and charging $5 and thinking, boy, that's a deal for a whole evening. And they're lucky that parents are lucky that we had so many great volunteers to make these things happen, and donations. So I think Nancy's thought long and hard about this, and I think the $7 makes good sense.
Good dollars.
If there are are there other questions? If not, does somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion to accept the increase in youth evening programs from $5 to $7.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I can
I'll
second.
Lauren? Okay, Lauren seconds it. Okay, we will do a roll call vote. Janet?
Yes.
Jennifer's absent. John's absent. Arnie?
Yes.
Viviana?
Yes.
Pat is absent. Lauren?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Human Services budget, operating budget. Jeanette, would you like to
Sure.
take?
So we sent you guys a lot of papers, a lot of materials, and I hope that you had time to look through it over the weekend. The abridged version is the letter of transmittal. It basically is a cheat sheet. It tells you where things are going up, where things are decreasing. Nancy's increase in revenue is an important factor. What we're looking at is trying to mitigate increased salaries that were not negotiated by us, so outside of our control, and increased outside agency fees. Also, we are wholly connected to these outside agencies and are not able to get those out of our budget, although we might discuss one of them leaving our budget. And so the only other way to mitigate increased costs is to raise revenue. And thankfully, Christy did an enormous amount of research, and I have piles of paper on my desk that she put together and really did a lot of looking back and looking forward. And she's produced more revenue for next year. It's an estimated revenue, but with that estimated revenue, our budget actually decreases by almost $10,000, including the salary raises and outside agency increases, and including a request for 4 additional hours for the social worker here. So what we've done here is I think, good stewardship of the tax dollars. We've responded to the Board of Finance's request to level fund. We have increased costs here. Bottom lines are up, but projected revenue is way up. So it more than mitigates these increases. We will actually be decreasing our budget. So that said, that's the overview of these numbers. I can go line by line on the budget, but that's not my preference. Mary Ellen and I sort of differed on that. I think we go through what changed and leave everything else that didn't change as is, because it was approved last year and therefore should be, okay. So the items that are changing, we have introduced the idea of 4 additional hours for the social worker. She now currently works 20 hours a week. She also currently takes phone calls and texts and emails in her own time to address issues with clients because there's just not enough hours in her 20 hours a week for how many clients we have. Client numbers are increasing. I got a call this afternoon for another client. You know, we're already maxed out in her day, and there's just it's not like clients are leaving, although one may be leaving, but I also found that out today. So maybe that's a balance. So I've requested 4 more hours a week for the social worker. I think it's prudent at this time to ask for that. We are overloaded in the social work cases. Her title is Senior Services Social Worker. She handles all adult cases. This is not just seniors, this is all adult cases. So, but again, that is offset by increased projected revenue next year. We have a line item, 54750, called Social Services. Lucky you guys were so great as to approve the Resident Assistance Fund, because with the Resident Assistance Fund, we no longer need that line item. That line item funds emergencies for families. And with the new description of the Food and Fuel Fund into the Resident Assistance Fund, we can take money from our fundraising dollars to help with emergencies. You know, I'm a very strong believer that budgets handle certain things and fundraising handles other things. This is sort of right in the middle there, and I believe that our fundraising dollars handles a lot of things like this, so that I'm comfortable with it being in the fundraising dollars in the Resident Assistance Fund. So we're going to remove that $500 from the budget. General professional services. This line item is all the food that happens here for the senior center. It's our in-person meals, it's our drive-through meals, and it's our frozen meal delivery system. Projected for FY23, we will still be doing all 3 forms of food delivery. Hopefully we'll get back into the in-person as soon as the renovation is completed. We'll hope that by next summer the COVID numbers are better here, and that we have a location. You know, not only do we not have in-person lunch because of COVID, we have no space because of the flood that we had. So we'll hope that the renovation starts and we'll have a location. So that fund, that general professional services, that's where the revenue line item offsets it. And it's projected that line item will go up by $5,000, a little over that, 5,200. And what we're asking for is a request of $3,000 to be able to cover the bills from Jewish Senior Services, where we purchase these meals. If we don't increase that line item, we'll have to stop doing some of the meals. We would not be able to do the projected amount of meals. And this is where Christy's work was amazing, you know, figuring out, you know, the numbers before COVID, what do we think would happen in a new space, you know, a newly renovated space. So we're going to launch, you know, a new space, and will we have attendance? Will it come back from pre-COVID numbers? Where do we lie? She just did a lot of thoughtful predictions, and I think she was very careful in predicting too much. You know, that said, if we have a great comeback, we can ask for line item transfers. We can instill more money into that account, but as it stands, we, you know, with projected attendance in the 3 areas that I identified, the drive-through, the frozen meal delivery, and the in-person. And I should mention, in case you're sitting there saying, hey, those drive-throughs, they don't charge for those drive-throughs. Those drive-throughs are all offset by donations. So we'll still continue doing them. Christy works really hard to make sure we have donors for them. The cost to the program is to programs and publicity, another line item for, little items that go with them is very minimal, but she does a great job. And so we're asking for $3,000 increase there to cover additional meals, which is covered by additional revenue. So I'm going to move on. I mean, I'm just flying through this. If there are questions, you can either mark them down, circle them on your letter of transmittal, or you can just interrupt. I'm fine with either way. Regional professional services. You might have read in my letter of transmittal about Quinnipiac Valley Health District. Last year, they raised us 25 cents per capita, which equated to about $2,000. They're raising us again, but utilizing a different number of, we've increased our population numbers. So they're raising us again by 25 cents, and it equates to a little over $4,000 in our little budget. I have a lot of feelings about this. I wrote to the director asking for an explanation of why their fees were going up dramatically over 2 years. Susan was great, and she talked to her neighbor who happens to be on the board to get an explanation. And I got an email from another board member explaining, and it comes down to two things. He says, the pandemic and inflation. I've asked for more information about, because I know that grants cover the pandemic response or most of it. And so, it comes down to this. Most of the work done in the Quinnipiac Valley Health District, all of the work done in the Quinnipiac Valley Health District for the town of Woodbridge is public health. It's public health, and therefore it sits in the Human Services Department. Is well testing and is, kitchen inspections for restaurants, the pool at Beecher Road School inspection, tattoo parlors, hairdressing salons. Is all that relevant to the work we do here? Not exactly. And I did a query out to state agencies that I belong to, and I got a response from about 20 towns where the health district does not fall under the Human Services Department. I think the way I wrote this is the way I feel. It's going to raise its rates, and I don't believe we need to cut programming to afford the health district for the rest of the town. This services the recreation department, it services the building department, it services the business district. There's the education. Biannually, they inspect the childcare centers. All of these other locations could be contributing to this budget item, or the town can just cover it the way they see fit. But I don't see where senior services, youth services, services to those community members in need should be penalized by a cut because an outside agency is raising their rates. So I've actually dismissed it out of hand, that we're not going to be able to cut our budget based on increases from an outside agency. We'll see what the rest of the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen think about that logic. To me, it's a no-brainer, but I'm interested to have other opinions. Questions?
Go
ahead, Dwight.
Jeanette, you just have to make that very clear when you do it, when you're up before the board, and just make it very clear, because it's also with like the fire department, they also have to pay for all the hydrants in town.
Right.
Get charged, so whatever regional water sends them, they have to pay it. They don't have any say over the amount. And
Right.
it goes up every year. So it's just something that you can actually state, and I don't think that's going to be.
Right, and the fire department
Stated
also
clearly.
puts the bill for the communication system that's in the police department and AMR. So, other departments put bills for various things. I just don't think we should be penalized for their increases. I read the Woodbridge Town News this week, and I got to tell you, seeing that Beecher Road School is looking for a $2 million infrastructure addition, and I'm worrying about $4,000 for our budget. It just seems to me, I think we're okay.
I would just like to interject here that I agree with Jeanette on this. We have discussed it, and I just need to share with all of you that I felt the same way once Jeanette presented it to me. So again.
And additionally, even though we're getting a $4,000 raise, we are taking this budget down, projected to be down $9,700 over last year. So in a way, we are mitigating that raise. We are, taking that in and offsetting it. Okay. And the other increase that we really feel strongly about is also to the senior center programs and publicity 54710. That is all of the programming that other than food that the senior center does is in that line item. And it's not so much publicity as it is programs, but certainly we will be working on some publicity through social media and other free outlets when we launch the newly renovated senior center. The programs that we do, the exercise, health, wellness, art, educational programs, all of those programs, we have to pay most of the time for instructors, and those fees do go up, and we are trying to offset them and be able to offer a lot. Christy's also just applying for another grant for another Moving for Better Balance, the Tai Chi Quan class that she offered last year. She's also gotten, Christy, what is the name of that class that's offered starting in January? I can never.
Basically a pre-diabetic or diabetic.
Yeah, it's pre-diabetes, but it's got this
prevention class.
It's got this huge name.
Evidence-based health.
Evidence-based health
program.
something. And that's a $1,200 value to each participant. That class sells, as an expensive item with one-on-one time with a nutritionist, and we're offering it for free through grant work that Christy's done. So, we do offset as much as we can, but then, we are looking for an increase there, especially given a new and improved senior center. We expect to be able to launch, new programming and make this a bigger, better community center than it has been in the past. Repair and maintenance will decrease by $500. It's my feeling that part of that budget line item has gone to repair and maintain kitchen equipment. We're not cooking. So I feel like we can lower that cost if and when we return to a cooking kitchen. We can talk about adding it into the FY24 budget, but at this juncture, we're doing fine. The equipment's not being used, and so far nothing's broken. Also, we were going to reduce the communications line item for cellular. In the past, we've had drivers who don't always have cell phones, and the senior center has loaned out a phone. We no longer have any drivers who would need a phone. We feel like part of being a driver is having a phone. So we're going to take our contract with that cellular data and cancel it and be done with it. 2 or 3 years ago, I went from 2 phones to 1. I didn't really think it was that necessary. And now we're going to be done with it. Those are the highlights. You might also look through this document a little further to see how the staff worked prudently to raise funds. The total of grants and donations, $361,000. Nancy's working right now on these We Care donations. She's up to 165 bags, at a over almost $2,500 value. Doing more with less is, one of Nancy's specialties. So we're really grateful. So that's that document, the letter of transmittal. We can talk about any questions on the actual budget narrative. There's 4 pages. It's mostly most of the money, and I think Pat Madden didn't want me to say this, but most of the money is tied up in salaries. That's the way I think most departments are, salaries for the people doing this work. We pay outside agencies like BH Care and Team and VNA and QVHD, and that comes to almost $75,000. And that's out of our budget. Those are the big ticket items. Everything else is really, small amounts, the programs that the senior center does, and I really want, especially David and Dwight, to remember that Susan and Mary Ellen did some serious research a couple of years back. And, the annual cost for providing these services 2 or 3 years ago for the seniors 65 and up is about $60 a year. Is that right, Susan? Do you remember?
A tiny bit more than that, but
$65 a year to provide these services for seniors across the gamut of all seniors and our disabled population, I think. And think about what it costs to educate a single student every single year. Somewhere people debate it between $12,000 and $17,000 a year. So we're talking about $65 a year to provide these services to keep seniors living independently, through our transportation and meal programs and our health programs, to keep them living independently in their own homes for longer. And that $65 investment in these seniors is certainly worth it unless they sell their houses and families with 4 or 3 kids move in, and we're educating them at $17,000 a year. I certainly think that the town prudently invests in their seniors to keep them living here longer and healthier through the senior center. And that's, that's the basic pitch of the senior center, of human services. That's what we do. We provide, we're the safety net for all of the town's population here, and we provide access to state agencies, information services, all of that work. If we didn't have it, if we go away, that's serious for a town. So we need to invest in this budget. I'm just practicing on you guys,
the
that, right?
buzzword is aging in place, guys. You'll read it more and more and hear it more and more. And
Yeah.
the exact number, I will be more
Yeah.
specific.
No, I believe it's 65.
It was around there.
And so, in late January, we have to go before the boards of finance and selectmen and present this. And you've been a very good test case. You're all smiling and you're still with us. So that's a good thing. We have to practice this, and we have to make sure that all of their questions can be answered. So if you guys have more questions, that'd be awesome. I think, you have a number of documents. You have our general description, which goes into the budget book. General description, accomplishments, major objectives. You have the performance indicators. These are all good numbers. there's a capital budget page, there's a wage analysis, and there's revenue predictions, all of those materials. And then there's 2 pages of an explanation. One is the youth services budget, and the other is her chart, chart 1, which really explains it. Nancy, do you want to talk about your budget? It shows up in the narrative at 56,000, but Nancy does a lot of work with revenue from her programs and also billing the town of Bethany to support. So I'm not putting you on the spot, Nancy. If there are questions about those materials, anybody have questions about how, Nancy gets a grant, 2 grants that offset her salary, and programming at Beecher. Does anybody have questions about those documents? I don't want to short shrift anyone.
The other thing I might want to mention is we have been working closely with Youth Services in Orange as well, and with the schools, because there are programs that might be too expensive for one of us to afford. But if we come together and do it, then we can afford better programming, because some of the programs are, they're not $600 anymore. Some of them are $1,200, $2,000, whatnot. But we are trying to work with the town of Orange to at least do, 1 or 2 evening programs a year, so that we can cut costs for the DJ and inflatables that way.
Can I ask a question here?
Mhm.
The mission hasn't changed. You're expanding your programs and you're reducing your budget, according to what I read, as by $9,700. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So why are you arguing with yourself? I just don't get it. Anyway, that's
Well, there are bigger principles here. The idea that QVHD's raised 2 years in a row, could potentially, if Christy and Nancy had not found additional revenue coming in, and you guys just voted in even more additional revenue, if we hadn't done that, we're passing this on to residents, we'd be offsetting that by closing down programming, not
Sure.
expanding it.
No,
So
I get that. But every union salary has gone up 2.4% across the board throughout town. And, everybody just shakes their head and said, well, there's nothing we can do about it. So I would think that if your fees to from Quinnipiac Valley are increased, it should fall in the same category. You can't control it. It shouldn't really affect your budget, your programming and your budget. That would be,
Sure.
my feeling about it.
just one correction. It's not just the union salaries. It's actually the non-union salaries go up as well. So everyone's salary.
Everybody's salaries go up.
Yes.
And you're right. The story I heard on NPR the other day was businesses are increasing salaries 3.9% to match inflation. And so just seeing the 2.4 here in Woodbridge, I can imagine other places are raising salaries even more in other towns and other locations. So
Mhm.
May I just say that I think it's another example of something that we've all been very aware of, that human services, the staff is amazing and has been for a very long time. And whenever a task is put before them, they are serious about it. They knew what the charge was, and they took it seriously. They wanted to make sure that they could do their best at a time when, Woodbridge is feeling the crunch a little bit, but and also to reevaluate things that Quinnipiac didn't make increases in the past like that. So this is something that Jeanette realized that's a pretty hefty increase for us based on our budget. So I think it's just another example, glowing example of the staff and how seriously they take their mission to provide services for the senior population that's aging and that's increasing in Woodbridge. And again, I would like to
And
say
these services.
hats off. And youth services. Nancy, I don't mean to, when I say it, I always lump it together because it's a human services department, but youth services and seniors. And I think, again, it's another example of the staff taking their job
So
very.
I should warn you, I've been through this budget a couple of times now, and I relook at each item, I build it up and I look at each item. Unless something drastically changes, I don't see, this is bare bones. This is it. I've dug and I've scrimped and I've removed things, and I just don't see getting anything else out of this budget, with the exception of a cable bill that Christy and I are researching, that we think we can, maybe use a Chromecaster from a laptop to cast onto our TV any programming we might need, and that might cost like $35, and we can get rid of a monthly cable bill. With the exception of that, and we're just looking at that now, we may be able to cancel that by the end of January or February. It's just not a lot of room to go. We have to run, we have to keep the cars going. We have to, pay the salaries and run the programs. And I think that Woodbridge residents deserve vibrant programming and creative programming, and between Nancy and Christy and the rest of the staff, they work really hard to manufacture these great programs, sometimes with little or no budget. So, hats off to them.
Could I have just a couple of comments and then a question?
Sure.
Reading the budget and then hearing your description today made me realize that you've essentially attacked each item surgically. I can't imagine finding another 20 cents out of the budget that you haven't already thought about. It's just really very impressive in that sense. But it feels to me, reading the budget, the way it's presented, that the Quinnipiac Valley Health District almost feels like an albatross to us, that it's sort of something that we're required to fund, required to carry, but it's not that connected to our mission. It does a lot of other things that are completely irrelevant to our mission in that regard. And it would seem at some point there has to be some shared responsibility for that particular line item. Maybe not this year, but maybe, as the years go on, some way to share that with other departments. And one question, when you say that it's $65 cost per participant in the program, question I just realized I've never asked: how many participants are in the program, and what percentage of that are the eligible participants in the town of Woodbridge?
Yeah, so it varies. That number that Susan and Mary Ellen figured out is based on population numbers, and that 32% of Woodbridge is over 65.
Okay.
So that's just everybody who would have access to the programming. And we sort of look at it that we haven't got a membership fee. That's something we can think about, should we need to in the future, a membership fee, when we need to raise more revenue, we might think about that. But at this juncture, we don't have a revenue, we don't have a membership fee. So knowing exactly the population of Woodbridge residents who utilize this is difficult. People come, people go, we lose people. So best guesstimate on years ago, like in the last, they stopped having us do annual reports, but it was somewhere around 500 participants, somewhere around that, 300 sometimes, a little more other times. Right now, much less. much less using those programs. However, you start building in the families that receive meals and the families that receive services and the 50 families that just got food baskets at, we just keep adding those groups, it becomes much larger. So difficult to say. We do service a population that's not only Woodbridge residents for some of our programming, like exercise classes that are open to the public, or pickleball. They pay a little increased annual membership for pickleball. It's $25 for Woodbridge residents, and what is it, Christy, 30 for, or 35 for?
20 and 25.
$20 and $25. So we charge a little bit more for out-of-towners there. But the socialization that having out-of-town residents provides for the in-town residents is immeasurable, because you've got to have people together to create these groups. And so you have a craft group, and 14 ladies are from Woodbridge, 2 are from Bethany, and a few more are from surrounding towns, Hamden and others. It becomes the socialization that's important, and community. So we don't discriminate for most things. These free lunches, they're just for Woodbridge residents. But other than that, those are numbers that are hard to come by. We're hoping that when we launch the new center, we can use the Schedules Plus software more to get us better data on the check-in numbers and the registration numbers, because it all contains that information there.
And I also want to say, Arnie, that we never, when we searched for a number, we never had any idea of the proportion of how much do we spend on educating, and knowing that education is very important in Woodbridge and people are willing to pay for that. But we wanted some number. We never thought it was a perfect number, but we asked Town Hall for population numbers, and then, came up with something. My recollection is that was closer to 75 or something like that, but I can get that exact number for you. But again, some idea of that's a very dramatic difference, right? An enormously dramatic difference of how much.
I'd say.
And it really was a surprising number.
I realize that's a hard number to
Yes.
come up with, because it's changing, different people participating in different programs and
Yes.
what
Yes.
have you. Yes, I
And
realize
there's
that.
crossover, because someone in the craft group is also utilizing transportation, is also perhaps getting a meal. So there's a lot of crossover participation, but that's what we want. Somebody comes to use our transportation, and then they find out we have a health program that they're interested in, and that's how it grows.
Mhm.
Questions about the budget?
If there are no other questions or any comments, could I have a motion to accept our FY23 Human Services operating budget?
I'll make a motion to do so.
Janet, okay, and a second?
I'll second.
Viviana, thank you. Okay, roll call. Janet,
Yes.
Arnie,
Yes.
Viviana,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and myself. Yes. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. And our next meeting is Tuesday. Our regular meeting is Tuesday. Please note that. Tuesday, January 4th. On Zoom again. And I'll need a motion to adjourn. Please.
Before you adjourn, I just have one quick question. I may have missed it, but I didn't see an item in your budget for transportation cost. Is that included somewhere else?
54710, programs and publicity.
Programs and publicity.
And also, there's a gas expenditure in there for gas, and there's also a vehicle maintenance fee. In our personnel are the drivers' fees, for their
Okay.
salaries. So it's spread out in
In
different.
there, it's not broken, yeah, okay.
Correct.
And you're asking for another vehicle, I see.
We're asking for a replacement vehicle.
Hey, the vehicle, right. And
Our current vehicle, it's been what, 3 weeks, Christy? 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
3 or 4 weeks at least.
3 or 4 weeks. It's been at Public Works for repair. We only have one mechanic, and he's pulled off the job repeatedly to fix, Public Works vehicles, and it needs massive work to keep it back on the road. It's a 2007 with 170 something thousand miles on it. And we're hopeful that we're not going to have to buy another vehicle. We're hopeful that the police department will be able to pass on one of their decommissioned vehicles again. But, this vehicle was just given to us in 2020, and it's already in the shop with a ton of miles on it. And thankfully, by using Public Works to repair our vehicles, we pay for the parts, but we don't pay for the labor. So a job that is 3 8-hour fixes would have been quite expensive at your local mechanic, but it's just going to cost us for the
let me just
part.
stop you. My question was, do you have a particular vehicle in mind?
A sedan. We have 2 vans, but they can't go on the Merritt Parkway, and many seniors who aren't ready to get into a wheelchair and go on the lift can't climb on the vans. They prefer to get into a
Right.
car, and they're
Okay.
much more comfortable that way. So we definitely, we're at a loss 3 to 4 weeks without a car, and we really need to replace that vehicle.
So the police vehicles that they give you are, they're broken down. They've got a lot of mileage on them. They got a lot of idling hours on them, and they're on their last legs. That's why they get replaced by the police
David,
department.
if you want to go to bat that we could get a
No.
new car.
Oh, well, no, I saw the $35,000 in there. That's why I wanted. My question is, have you given any thought to an energy efficient vehicle? And if not,
Again, David, if you want to go to bat for
Oh,
us
yeah,
to
I
get a
will.
new car,
I will.
we would love that. We would, there's charging stations here, some at Public Works, some at the library. We would love that. But again, that would take somebody on the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, making it their mission to get the Woodbridge Senior Center energy efficient vehicle.
Right.
We could talk more about it. I don't want to
I
take
think,
up everyone's time.
yeah,
And just another point here, that our capital budget was presented and approved already was it in December?
Here at the Human Services Commission,
Yes,
it will be
yes.
presented to the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen along with our operating budget in late
Right.
January, early February. They haven't given me that date yet. Just a quick note, I won't be here for the January 4th meeting. Christy will be your host on Zoom, and expect Ellen to send you your links and agendas, and I'll send a report as best I can. And happy holidays.
And we need a motion to adjourn too, though. We did not get the motion. David,
Not
are
yet.
you okay with you're
I'm
okay?
fine, yeah. I
Okay,
think-
good. Thank you for going to that for us.
I'll make a
Motion.
motion to adjourn.
Who's making the motion?
Janet.
Janet. Oh, we're gonna get, does anybody, okay, fine, Janet. Does anybody else want to make the motion, or Janet, fine. Janet made it. Anybody want a second?
I can second.
Kathy, okay, perfect.
All approved by acclamation on this one.
Okay, we can approve it by acclamation. All right. Okay, all right.
You all have happy holidays.
All of you, Happy New Year, and see you in the new year on Zoom.
Merry Christmas.
Okay.
Stay safe.
Happy holidays,
Okay.
everybody.
Happy holidays.
Bye, everybody.